The SDW Technology Profile is an important data set that helps us understand how our feelings, thoughts, and actions related to technology integration transform over time. Let's take a look at how we can utilize these results to make meaningful instructional changes and professional development decisions in our classrooms. One of the key data sets within the technology profile are the 7 dimensions of classroom application. Here you can see the 7 categories that are measured as a part of the technology profile survey. Across the top, you see the stages of adoption, starting at entry and moving to innovation. We've layered over the top of this the SAMR model. This provides common language in our district based upon what we talk about related to technology integration. The key element to understand within this is that at the entry point, little to no technology is utilized or reported to be utilized by the teacher or the students. At the innovation or redefinition end, the technology is essential to the task, and the task cannot really be done meaningfully without the technology's presence. From the perspective of planning, it's important to understand this. A key data point to look at is our entry. What we really aim to do, first and foremost, is move educators from entry to following stages beyond that. So one key element to look at is this percentage over time. Are we seeing our entry point go down? After that, the movement's a little bit more tricky to track. We don't really know where educators go once they've left entry. This is largely because as they leave one area, others are leaving other areas, either up or down the scale. Let me give you these key guidelines. We first want to move people, as I said, out of entry. The next stage is to move them over this line, from augmentation to modification. We know that this line is the key where technology begins to meaningfully impact student achievement. And so the more of our teachers we can move to this key appropriation or modification area, the better off we are going to be with our technology adoption in the classroom. One of the questions we're commonly asked is what skills and questions make up the rolled up score of those 7 classroom application categories. So near the end of your technology profile report, you'll find several pages of tables that look similar to this. Each of the questions outlined here demonstrate for you the key questions or skills that were asked about that made up the overall score for that classroom application category. We think this can be a high leverage tool as you're planning professional development or making decisions about what high leverage tools and skills you might use in the classroom to boost student achievement. Let's take a look at this example. Once we've identified a high-leverage instructional strategy we're going to use, the next question is to ask ourselves, what tools do we have available that we might use for that purpose in the classroom? If we identify a classroom sound recording application, we can then take a look at this data provided in the technology profile report to help us understand how ready our staff is to use that tool in the classroom. In this example, if the focus is on a sound recording app, we have a low readiness for our staff to begin utilizing this application. That means we might need to provide some basic PD to get them started and some booster PD to give them more ideas of how to use these applications within their classroom. In the same vein, if you decided that you were going to use some sort of multimedia application, maybe iMovie, to have students demonstrate their thinking, we could take a look at this data to see that we have quite a bit of readiness when it comes to movies and images, and we might not need the same level of basic PD to get the same bang for our buck in this particular set of tools. So that's one way a leader can use the data from the technology profile to meaningfully plan PD along with the instructional strategies they hope to use in their classrooms. Another key piece that is within the technology profile that might help you to make some decisions about professional development comes when the question arises, how should we deliver this professional development to our staff? So let's use the example again of that sound editing application. We know that in fall, we're going to want to have all of our students recording themselves using an app like GarageBand. We also know that our staff is not really comfortable with this type of application. They're going to need some real supports in order to learn it in a quick enough manner to get started early in the school year next year. So how can we deliver professional development that will suit their needs as professional learners and also deliver on results in a timely fashion? We can take a look at the technology profile data where staff have indicated their professional learning preferences. So let's take a look at what the data is telling us. About 66% of our staff is really in favor of face-to-face courses and workshops. When something works for 2/3 of our staff, it's a good choice for us to deliver that kind of professional learning when our skills are relatively low or we're new to some sort of application. In this way, we meet our learners where they're at. Another option that we might want to consider, though, is that for about half of our staff, some sort of peer coaching or experts or specialists coming in to support them will work in getting them up and started. Again, our goal here is to build their confidence in using this kind of application. And so we use the data here to determine that for something that's going to be a high leverage strategy in our classroom, we need to make sure everybody feels comfortable with this application early in the school year. If we offer professional development in a format that works for our learners, there's a greater likelihood they'll feel comfortable with that format and pick up the skills they need to start using the tools in their classroom. The next two data sets within the technology profile really hone in on questions of culture within your building or district, as well as questions of support, collegiality, willingness to take risks, and the reliability of the technology within the classroom, or at least the perceptions of those elements. These are key elements to take a look at as you're trying to decide what kinds of technology to implement within your classroom, because they can really shift or alter our willingness to try new things in the classroom. For instance, if a staff doesn't feel like they are able to easily take risks within the classroom, then trying something new might not necessarily be the most comfortable next step for them. If they feel that the network is not reliable or that they don't have enough technology for their use, they may ask questions that lead to initial barriers in getting started in using the technology. So in both the district and the building specific data sets, take a close look at what the numbers are telling you and where your staff is in related to those items. And this is the second data set that also looks at risk-taking, support, reliability of the technology, but from a district perspective. This particular data set asks questions about long-term professional development, a clearly articulated vision for how technology can support our teaching and learning, a tech-integrated curriculum. So again, these are key items for you to understand about your specific building so that you can make some decisions about what the perceptions are, what the realities are, and what might be potential barriers to meaningful technology adoption. Some of the ongoing questions that we've asked throughout the technology survey history have been focused on two key tools, Google Apps for Education and Blackboard, which are the next two data sets we're going to take a look at. While consistently our Google Apps for Education numbers are very high and we have many agrees and strongly agrees, here's something important for you to take a look at, and it's in how these questions were specifically designed. At this point in the questioning, we shift from professional use up here to student use down here. And that's very much on purpose. We understand that first and foremost, educators need to feel comfortable using the tools for their particular professional uses, sharing them with colleagues, checking their email, using a calendar. But at some point we need to shift into using these tools with students. And so in an ongoing pattern, what we have seen is very high levels of agree and strongly agree here, 4s and 5s. And then we see a slight dropping off over that line where we start to use the tools with students. If we're looking at any kind of professional development or instructional practices that focus on Google Apps for Education, one of the key pieces to understand is how do we move down here so that we have more students using these tools meaningfully to show us what they know and have learned. The second tool we focus specifically on is the Blackboard across the district. And while Blackboard has been available within our district for a very long time, the reality is that now that devices are available in every student's hands every day, that those devices go home with students, Blackboard becomes a critically important element for our instructional delivery. This is particularly true as we think about personalizing learning, giving every student a unique experience, access to resources that are just at their levels and at their interests and in their preferred learning style. So it's important for us to understand that while we are traditionally lower in some of these key elements, this is something that we should seriously hone in on across the district at varying levels. So take a look at your building's specific beliefs about Blackboard and start to understand what might be working, what isn't working, where we might need some more professional development opportunities. These are key pieces to focus on with Blackboard. We know that literacy and literacy instruction have become of renewed importance across our system. The technology profile offers some insight on how technology is being utilized in your building to support literacy instruction. There are really two key categories to take a look at in this section of the data. The first 4 questions talk about a general awareness and use of technology to support both reading and annotation. Again, it starts with an awareness and then moves to actual use of these tools for instructional purposes. That's one key place to start. Another important piece to look at is a very specific tool set known as iBooks Author. This is a really powerful tool that can allow us to build scaffolded, meaningful, authentic texts that are easy to engage with and that can support our learners exactly where they are as it relates to approaching new text. The last data set that we're looking at within the technology profile is SAMR-specific data. Again, this data set, like the 2 before it, really focuses on a movement from awareness down to meaningful use of this SAMR model. Taking a look at your specific data, it might be helpful to first focus on building in a 4 or 5 your awareness and understanding and explanation of these tools and how they impact instruction. But ultimately, we have to get down to making meaningful instructional decisions utilizing this framework. SAMR can feel like just another thing. It's important to stress for you and for your staff that SAMR simply gives us a language to talk about how we're using the tools within our classroom and gives us a way to think about how we could use them differently. So perhaps it's time to take just a little bit closer look at what your technology profile survey says about your building.